Thank you everybody for joining us today. Just a quick reminder, please leave your microphones and your videos off during the presentation to prevent less distractions for our presenter and everybody else attending. Today we have Michelle Erickson, who is the Executive Director of the Abused Adult Resource Center here in Bismarck, and she will be discussing domestic violence.
And so much more. Hi, I am Michelle Erickson, like Kylie said, and I've been with the Abused Adult Resource Center for about 15 years. I've been the director going on 2 years, a year and a half, I guess. So I kind of started in transitional housing. I was the transitional housing coordinator when I was hired and worked a lot with landlords and housing programs and all of those things to help clients find permanent housing. So I spent a lot of time the last 15 years really working in that realm around housing. So I feel like I have some significant experience in that area. Go ahead, Kylie, you can go next slide. So basically our goal overall is, we're also in Bismarck for anybody that didn't know that. Our goal is really to help clients, get away from those lives of abuse and live a safe, healthy, safe homes. And we work with the communities to create awareness. We have fundraising events, all of those things. We're a nonprofit. And we currently, at this point, are working out of 8 locations, which I will get to, and have about 75 employees. So we're a pretty large nonprofit. And all of the things that we do in the end are helping victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, trafficking, stalking, dating violence, all of those things. That's our service area. We serve 7 counties, including the North Dakota side of Sioux County. And we have a couple advocates that go down to Sioux County, and then we have an advocate that goes to the other rural counties as well. These were just a few of our milestones. We've been around for about 40 years. We have, established a task force. We have an emergency shelter, a thrift store. We added a sexual assault task force in the late 90s. We opened Hope House, which is our transitional housing unit, in 2010. And we also have a 7-unit permanent supportive housing apartment building as well, that are all efficiencies. And like I said, now we're out of 8 locations and have 75 employees. So our main program really is the crisis intervention program, where clients can call us anytime. We have a 24-hour hotline. We'll schedule people either come in or they sometimes just walk into our office. We have a new way of contacting us now also, which is our chat feature, which I'll explain a little later. But the crisis staff, which I believe is about 10, we will do an intake with that person, find out kind of where they're at, what's going on. We'll see what they need help with, whether it's just resources, referrals, housing, safety planning, protection orders, any of those things. We just kind of get them through their initial crisis phase and then decide what needs to happen after that, or they decide what needs to happen after that, whether it's shelter or something else. So that kind of starts the process when someone comes in to work with us. So our new feature is a chat feature, and right now we only have it staffed Monday through Thursday from noon to 3, and the website is there. And basically what it looks like is a feminine health type website, and then it'll say to chat with an advocate, click here, and then they can click in and they can talk with an advocate. There's also a quick escape button for anybody that needs to get out of it quickly. It removes the history, and then they can kind of get whatever information they need through chatting. So we've noticed during COVID especially, we actually had this idea prior to COVID starting, so it actually worked out pretty well, was that people were having a hard time getting a hold of us because they couldn't necessarily call or come in because they were quarantining with the abusive person in their life. So This chat is kind of still getting going. Recruiting and training is we're working on. We have some college students that are going to be helping us out. And then, we hope to man it 24/7 eventually. But it's really just to get basic information to them and then try to set up time for them to either come in or call an advocate when it's safer for them. So Pam's house, which is our emergency shelter, currently, well, in normal times has 38 beds. We are operating at about 50% capacity right now. We're trying to keep one family per room so that things stay a little bit cleaner and safer and healthier. So we don't really have a time stay on our shelter. I would say that the average stay is 3 to 6 months. We kind of provide everything that they need as far as food, clothing. We meet them where they're at, figure out what they want to do to help them get their goals accomplished, whether it's to go back to school or get housing, or maybe they just need a break from the situation they're in. So they just stay, 3, 4, 5, 6 days, whatever. And then they decide to go back. And hopefully when they go back to those situations, they are at least armed with some safety plans and, know where to get help if they need it. They also, after they've been in the emergency shelter for at least 30 days, they can apply to move to our transitional shelter. We provide a lot of children's programming. We have a beautiful playroom, big, huge playroom, and a child advocate that provides, some childcare, games, toys, support group for children. In the summer, they get to go to the raging rivers and the zoo and things like that. So we try to give the kids, while they're in the shelter, at least the most normal life that we can help them have while they're with us. We'll also help with transportation. And then, if there's a community event or something, we try to make sure everyone gets to attend those if they want to as well. Our transitional shelter is 25 beds at full capacity. We have 7 bedrooms, so right now we have 7 families, which generally brings it pretty close to that. But again, keeping one family per room at this time. They can stay in that program up to 2 years. And we also have a New Directions program there, which is an education and employment program that anybody at transitional shelter or emergency shelter can participate in. And I think I have that later on in a slide. And then we just kind of are trying to help them make that transition from emergency shelter to permanent housing, help them develop some life skills, learn the things they need to learn so that when they live in their own place, they'll be successful, without needing that case management every day, all day kind of thing. And again, children's programs also are there as well. 2 new grants that we have just received was the Department of Justice Transitional Housing Grant, and that just started in October, and we are helping victims moving out of our shelters and secure permanent housing in the community, or transitional housing in the community, which they'll still be in their own apartment, but we will provide case management, we will assist with their rent, and we'll just kind of help them kind of get on their feet in their own place. Sometimes shelter living.
Yeah, like some places it looks like.
Okay, I'm good. Can you go back to that other slide for a second? Okay. So sometimes shelter living isn't always for everyone. And so this is an opportunity for them to maybe not be in the shelter or transitional housing and get into their own place right away in the community. And then we also have a HUD rapid rehousing grant that started in October. It's a year-long grant. And we'll be helping people that are experiencing homelessness and or domestic violence. Well, they have to have domestic violence as part of their homelessness, and we'll help them also get permanent housing. And we do case management budgeting, encourage them to participate in New Directions, and just help them try to become more independent so that they can be successful on their own. Next slide. New Directions is the program I was just talking about, and basically it's a curriculum that includes things like interviewing skills, assistance with filling out a FAFSA form, budgeting, self-esteem, all of those kind of things. And as they as they finish each section, we pay them a stipend. And when they complete the actual classroom training, then they're allowed to go to Seeds of Hope and do some work there and get paid a stipend for the work there. But it gives them the chance to get some skills around retail, working a cashier position, stocking shelves, any kind of like issues like that would be part of retail. And then they have something to put on their resumes when they start to apply for jobs. So we have hired people just straight from the program into Seeds of Hope as well. And I think it just gives them a real kind of little boost. A lot of our victims that we work with have never been able to work outside of the home. So this is a good little program for them to go through and just really increase their self-esteem and get them ready to either go back to school or get a job or whatever their goal is in the end.
Michelle, Cheryl, you've got a few questions here. Can we stop and
Sure. I know I see them keep popping up and I'm like, I don't know if I should answer or not.
The first one is, what is involved in training to be a volunteer as a chat advocate?
So we are actually scheduling a training this coming weekend, and it's going to be about a 4-hour training. This will be our first one. We basically teach you the basics on how to converse with somebody through the chat, some basics about domestic violence, sexual assault, and then just how to refer them, to call in and get a hold of us, or, try to figure out what they need right away. It's going to be an in-person training, this one. We're going to have it set up at a hotel and we'll be 6 feet apart and all of that. I just feel like it's necessary to try to explain a lot of that stuff in person and then practice the chatting on the computers. So we have different scenarios we'll give people to work through. So that's going to be our first one. So if you are interested, it'll be in Bismarck, but if you are interested, I won't know if we have more space in this one until later this week, probably Thursday, but you could definitely call our office and leave me a message, or I'll have my email. You can probably just email me. That would be the best way to do it. And that'll be at the end.
The next one is, I'm guessing how big are the rooms that the families stay in? I'm guessing it's community type with a living with a shared living room kitchen.
Well, both of our places our emergency shelter is a house, and so there's 7 different bedrooms. Some share bathrooms and some have their own bathrooms. Usually have some like bunk beds in each one. And then at transitional housing, it's a building that we lease from Burleigh County Housing, and it also has 7 bedrooms. Most of them share a bathroom. A few of them have their own bathrooms. And then again, bunk bed style. But yes, they share community spaces, the kitchen, the living room, laundry room, all of that is community space. Yep.
Who pays for the classroom training to get a skill?
Say that one again.
Who pays for the classroom training to get a skill?
Who pays for the stipends? Is that what the question is?
I think that's what they're referring to.
Okay. We have some grant money that pays those stipends. So they basically earn $5 a unit, and each of the classroom units can be anywhere from 2 to 4 or 5 units. So they usually earn $10 to $25 for each unit that they complete of the classroom training.
Is it only retail that you would get training for, or is it for a job reference, or can you help someone with actual school?
I don't know what that means by help them with actual school. Like our store, Seeds of Hope, is a thrift store. So anything within retail is what they will, have the opportunity to learn. If they don't want to get a job, then if they don't want to work and they just want to go back to school, then we help them figure out how to get, assistance to go back to school and complete, whatever degree they're looking at. We also will help people get into like CNA training if that's something they want to do, or hairdressing school. I'm not sure I'm getting that question correct, but
I think so, with higher education continuing on there.
Okay.
The last one is, do you ever train elsewhere in the state? So do you know if any of the other abused adult resource centers are doing something similar?
Well, there's 20 domestic violence programs in North Dakota. We are probably one of the largest And I don't know of anyone else doing that kind of program in our state. As far as training, like for the chat program, I would be willing to train people that don't live here, but we have to get through this first one and work out the bugs, and then we possibly will do an online training after that. But yeah, I would be open to people in other parts of the state assisting with our chat as well.
Okay, that was it for the question. Oh.
Okay. So another one of our programs is Bonnie's Apartments, which is the 7-unit permanent supportive housing apartment building. We own the building, but the vouchers are provided by Burleigh County Housing. So they're project-based vouchers based on income, and they sign a year lease, and then they're able to stay there month to month after that. We've had a couple people stay there for 5 years already. So we provide case management. We don't have staff on site, but they have access to everything that anyone else would have as far as, you know, our on-call advocates or whatever they need. So those are efficiencies. So they have to be, in order to qualify for that program, they have to be a single, meaning no custody of kids at the moment. They have to be a victim of domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, one of those crimes. They also have to be homeless, and then they have to be willing to participate in case management. So I think we currently have 3 apartments open. So if anyone has people that fit those criteria, send them our way, because we've been having a really hard time filling those apartments, which is odd when there's so many homeless. They do have to fit into Burleigh County Housing's criteria. So I think a lot of people know that, you know, the felonies and things like that, sex offenses, those kind of things might hinder them getting into housing. But if you have any questions about whether somebody might be a good fit, just feel free to call me about it or email me. Our rural advocates we have 2 that travel to Fort Yates, and then we have 1 that does our other rural counties, and we've established task forces in some of those areas, work with law enforcement, we assist with transportation, we work with the schools to provide training around domestic violence and sexual assault. We have we've been in Fort Yates and in Cannonball in that area for, I don't know, over 20 years probably. So we have a really good relationship down there with some of the entities like IHS and the jail and Child Protective Services and things like that. So we actually have an office space in Sitting Bull College. So we're pretty accessible for most people. And again, our rural advocates are great about going to pick people up or meeting them at the gas station or the casino or wherever they need to meet in order to get the advocacy they need. Sexual assault advocacy. Again, we are part of the sexual assault response team in our community, which consists of sexual assault nurse examiners, law enforcement, and an advocate. So when someone presents to law enforcement or the hospital that they have been sexually assaulted, it kind of activates this team response. And a nurse is called, an advocate is called, and they all meet up at that place to interview the victim and walk her through the process, him or her through the process. Which is usually a lengthy process. It could take anywhere from 2 to 4 hours usually to have the law enforcement interview, the sexual assault exam. The advocate will speak with family members that might be with or friends. We'll go all the way through the court case if it goes to court with them, and we'll provide support if they want to go to follow-up exams. We, again, are 24/7 service. So if it's 2 a.m, we get up and we go to the hospital. So I want to say last year we had I think last year was 101 sexual assaults in our communities in the 7 counties. And those were just the reported ones. And honestly, maybe a handful went to trial. So it's not a highly prosecuted crime. And sometimes that's why victims of sexual assault need a lot more advocacy around it. There's a lot of guilt involved and things like that. And you know, feeling like lost and whatever. So a lot of the times the sexual assault victims work with their advocates for years. And we try to get them set up with counseling if they want it and whatever else they might need. We have 2 advocates that work with law enforcement. All of our advocates work with law enforcement. We have 2 that are kind of the direct contacts for Burley and Bismarck and Mandan and Morton. So we get copies of those police reports that are involving a domestic or sexual assault or any of those kind of issues. And then we do outreach to those victims to try and help them if they need help, safety plan with them, you know, talk to them about where they're at, what they need. Law enforcement here in this area has been doing an amazing job with lethality assessments. So when they're on site with a victim in a situation, they kind of do an assessment to sort of see like how dangerous the situation is. And then if they screen in at a high danger assessment, they will get an advocate on the phone at that time to talk with that person right away. And we do, excuse me, a lot of team training with the law enforcement departments too, where we come in, do the training with new officers along with law enforcement so that they kind of get to see the victim side of things as well as what they would do as part of their job. We've asked them to come shadow advocates a little bit so they can see our side of it too. And I think we have just and that relationship's been building over years and years and years. So we have really good relationships with law enforcement in all of our counties. So we did have a grant for abuse in later life, which technically was for victims 50 years and older, which I am in that group. So I don't like elder, I like abuse in later life. That fits better. But we didn't get that grant renewed. So we still provide advocacy for victims if it's financial, caregiver, physical, emotional abuse. We work closely with guardian and protective services, vulnerable adults, protection and advocacy. We still do a support group for that abuse in later life group. And we can kind of work with them on transportation and housing too. Sometimes those relationships have been going on for a lot longer. And so there's more things involved than, you know, maybe somebody who comes in that's just been dating someone for 6 months. So the federal government at one point did this grant for abuse in later life and provided that intensive kind of advocacy and case management for people that were 50 years and older. So we still continue that even though we don't have the grant funding to do it anymore. Human trafficking is kind of a big thing in the state. We were partnered with YouthWorks and then now we're on our own and YouthWorks is on their own, but YouthWorks handles human trafficking victims under 24 and we handle the ones above 24 years old. So we still work really closely with YouthWorks. We provide advocacy. We work closely with law enforcement. If they choose to leave that life, you know, we can help them if they want to go back to where they came from or they want to settle here and get set up. We help them do all of that. And then we're part of some multidisciplinary team meetings around human trafficking in the state as well. It's a different group of victims to work with because human trafficking victims are a lot of the time not going to show up on our doorstep saying, hey, I've been trafficked, can you help me out? So it's a little bit different than working with sexual assault, domestic violence victims. It takes a lot of trust building to work with human trafficking victims to, you know, earn their trust and for them to trust you to help make decisions for them. So a lot of times there's a lot of medical issues involved. There's substance abuse. They're really intense cases and they also can go on for quite some time working with a trafficking victim and going through the court process if there's one and all of that to bring down the traffickers. So we have one advocate that works on that, but then again, anybody is able to take those calls as well. Our Family Safety Center is located at our main office in Bismarck, and we provide safe parenting time and exchanges. So this is one of this, besides Seeds of Hope, this is the only other program that there's any cost involved, which we use a sliding fee scale. So it kind of depends on if the court has ordered a certain parent to pay for that time or if it's split or how it works out. But we work really closely with protection order clients, you know, that can't have any contact with each other. So they come there to see their kids and they don't have to deal with the other person. Some people self-refer, probation and parole has referred people, social services, anybody that needs to see their child under supervision is eligible to come to our place, and we will monitor those visits, we document them, and we are testified super often, or subpoenaed super often to testify in custody cases. So I think we have about 25 families using us right now. That's decreased during COVID as well. We were closed for a little bit of time, about a month, but it's starting to get busier again now. So it's a good benefit for the community.
Okay, Michelle, I'm going to rattle off a couple more for you.
Sure.
First, we have a comment. I just want to say how wonderful job you all are doing. This is phenomenal that someone being abused has options to escape the abuse. It was not like that even in the 80s or 90s. Thank you for all you do.
Thanks.
And,
Thank you.
Question, do the clients in your transitional living have their own case managers?
Have their own what?
Case managers?
We have 2 case managers on site at Transitional and 1 housing advocate. And then at our emergency shelter, we have 2 case managers and 1 child advocate. So there is probably not 1 per person, but there's definitely plenty of case management at both locations.
Okay, the next question, why is there not a higher prosecution rate for someone who has been sexually assaulted?
That's a really good question. You know, I think it comes down a lot of the times, the ones that I've seen anyways, are usually there's a lack of evidence, or there is a he said, she said. A lot of sexual assaults happen with just 2 people in the room. And so it's difficult sometimes to prosecute those when there's no witnesses or anything like that. And then sometimes, many times, a victim's memory is maybe not always the best because of the trauma. And so sometimes it's hard to testify, or it's sometimes they just don't want to testify. So they just say, I don't want to go forward with it. I just want to forget about it. I want to say it's like a 4% prosecution rate, but I might be a little off on that number. It's very low though, very low. And for all those reasons.
Okay, that was the last question for now.
Okay. So Seeds of Hope is on the corner of 6th and Main in Bismarck. It's our thrift and gift store. It, like I said, provides on-the-job training for clients. We also have a somewhat of a career closet. It's not an actual area in there, but it's a program that we do for anyone in the community. So if somebody's starting a new job, they're not a client of ours, say they maybe just got out of jail and they got a new job and they don't have any clothes, they can get a referral to Seeds of Hope to pick out a couple outfits for their new job. Or we've had like few guys have asked for work boots, and so they go over and they can pick out work boots. Those all go through our main office, any of those referrals, but it's something that we do provide for the community, for people that are in need for new jobs, or interviewing actually. And so when people do leave our shelter to move into a new permanent house or apartment or something, we will help them kind of furnish their new homes from Seeds of Hope at no expense. So, you know, we'll let them pick out dishes and pots and pans and towels and bedding and whatever to kind of give them a little bit of a start. And then oftentimes we have clients show up with just the clothes on their back. So we will take them down if they're going into our shelter. We'll take them down to Seeds and get them some clothing for them and their kids, and you know, make sure that they have those basic needs met. Our Christmas store just opened last week in the basement, and it is this amazing. If you go to our Facebook page, Abused Adult Resource Center, I have posted some pictures, just anything Christmas that you would want. And that's like one of our biggest fundraisers. So the store actually provides about 27% of our budget. All of the income made from things selling there go back into our programs, into helping victims, and keeping, you know, everything running. So it's like I said, we're a nonprofit, so we don't make anything off of it. It goes right back into all of our programming. We are doing a lot in the prevention area. Unfortunately, because of COVID, you know, a lot of these things are in-person trainings and activities, and we haven't been able to continue a lot of those during COVID. Green Dot is one of our newest programs, and it's a bystander intervention program. It's also happening in Valley City, Fargo, and Grand Forks. It's basically teaching community people to intervene in a situation safely. So if you saw something happening, like people arguing at a bar or something, and it looked dangerous, you know, or looked like it was getting worse, just how to teach people to intervene safely and perhaps stop something from happening. In Her Shoes is an activity we do with high school usually, and it just kind of walks you through different situations and making decisions. Like, what would you do if your neighbor called CPS on your child? And then you have like A or B to pick from. So it's an interactive training that we usually do in the high schools. Coaching Boys into Men is a program that we've worked on for a few years that is really just teaching boys in sports teams that you know, about healthy relationships and being respectful, things like that. Safe Dates is one we'll start in the future, and that will probably be geared towards middle school. And then we just continue to do school and community presentations when we can. So getting the word out there as much as we can. These were our stats from, oh, I was right on the sexual assault, 101. These are our stats from last year. We had 27,000 contacts with clients. We had 984 new victims of domestic violence, 101 sexual assaults, petitioned for 170 protection orders, 540 parenting times and exchanges, sheltered 153 families and 109 children. And I know I looked at like our half year stats this year, and we're on track, if not a little bit higher on most of those. So even with COVID. This is how we're funded. Grants fund about 55%. We have state, local, federal grants. Our thrift store is 27%. 6% of our funding is from United Way, and donations and fundraising and special events about 9%, and then program fees, little things we get are like 3%. And we operate on about a $2 million budget, just over $2 million. So I'll pause for a minute to see if there's any other questions before I start the housing stuff.
Yeah, we've got a couple. I did not realize that human trafficking was a problem in North Dakota. Does this include someone who was a prostitute or someone who has been forced into the trade? I know a few people who have been prostitutes and wanted to leave, but did not know how.
Yes. Yes, it's a problem. I think it depends on I think prostitution's a pretty general term. I think it depends on a lot of the details that have happened with that. Like, it depends on if that person is like, it's somebody asking them to have sex with somebody and then they're getting zero money from it, or they have to turn that money over. Prostitution definitely interacts with human trafficking. I think it would depend on the I don't want to just make a blanket statement, because I think it depends. But if they're relying like on somebody else for something, like if that victim's relying on their pimp or their John or whatever for something, then it's definitely a possibility that's human trafficking. Was there another part to that question? Sorry.
No. I know a few people who have become prostitutes and wanted to leave but did not know how.
Then I would say if that's the case, they probably are being trafficked to some extent. So yeah. And there's a North Dakota, I don't have it right with me, but there's a North Dakota trafficking hotline as well that someone could call and get directed to the right place for services.
Okay.
I could try to find that.
The next one is, so say you have a tenant that is being physically assaulted. The cops have been out to the unit on multiple occasions due to management and neighbors calling the cops due to screaming at all hours of the night. Woman being dragged across the yard by her hair, etc. Every time the cops come to the unit, the woman denies anything happening and they leave. She has been referred to CVIC. I have brought her into the office to discuss the issues happening that is a disturbance to neighbors, and she sticks up for the abuser. How do you handle this issue?
I think that one thing people need to understand is there's like 100 reasons why somebody doesn't leave. You know, there might be kids involved, that might be their only source of income, that might be their only housing option. You know, there's a gazillion reasons, but there's also a sense of power and control with abusive people. And so they've worn that person down to nothing. They've called them names, they've told them they're worthless, they've, you know, beat them, whatever. There's like all these things. So sometimes I think it's really hard to, from the outside looking in, to just be like, why doesn't she leave? That just seems silly. And, you know, people need to start saying, why does he hit her? Why does he throw her across the room? Why does he call her names? You know, and trying to work at it from that angle. If she came into our agency, which it doesn't sound like she's ready to do if she hasn't gone to CVIC yet, I think if we were to, let's say we reached out to her through a police report, because there's been police involvement, we would just say, you know, here are the things we can offer you. You know, do you want to just talk about your safety a little bit? And we've had people hang up on us. Nope, nothing's wrong, click. But I think even the more you can tell people about the options that are available to them and the resources that are available to them, every time they're going to learn something and retain something, and eventually they might leave. It's like the national average is 7 to 9 times that somebody leaves before they leave for good. As far as people, as far as landlords and how to handle that, I don't think, you know, most of the time you can't just evict someone because they're a victim. That's not going to do you well. But, you know, you can talk to that victim about, would it help if I put a criminal trespass order in place? You know, do you know that CVIC can do A, B, and C, or A or C or whatever? I mean, I think the more that you show empathy and understanding and you try to talk to that person, eventually you'll build a relationship with that person, and hopefully they'll reach out for help at some point. I can't tell you what day she's going to leave or what's going to be her tipping point. It's hard to say. But I think that, you know, all the things, if you referred her to CVIC, that's great. You know, police keep showing up there. Yeah, I have seen landlords evict on too many police calls. But I think that doesn't always look good. But I get, you know, that you don't want to have a wrecked place and all kinds of issues for the other people that live in that area as well. I don't have a solid answer, I guess. It's just a matter of offering people that help and trying to understand from their point of view why they wouldn't leave or why they stay.
Okay, I've got a couple follow-ups on that then.
Okay.
If the neighbors saw the woman being abused, why can't the police arrest the abuser based on an eyewitness?
So like here, I can't speak for every other area in the state, but here we do that. Our officers do that lethality assessment, and that lethality assessment is going to say, like, has he ever strangled you? Has he ever forced you to do this? Does he have guns? Has he ever talked about starting things on fire? There's this list of lethality questions that they ask them. And that usually shakes out in situations where where an officer's on scene and they can't tell who's the abusive person. They'll do these lethality assessments on both people and try to make a decision and then be able to make an arrest. I can tell you during COVID here, they have been less likely to arrest because they don't want to put people in jail and whatever for COVID. But by no means are they leaving people in dangerous situations if they can help it. Sometimes they get there and there's already a story put together about, you know, I pushed him and then he punched me, or I tripped and I hit my head or whatever. And so even if I don't know about that situation, if there was an eyewitness to it and they were able to corroborate that story, I would think someone would be arrested, but I don't know what happened. So
Okay, and then here's a follow-up from the person who actually is dealing with the tenant. Okay, I've been offering her more information and have been very understanding. Just wanted to make sure there's any more I could do.
yeah, I'm not saying anyone's not being understanding. I think it's hard when you're in those situations I think you feel helpless that you can't help somebody. I think you're doing what you need to do. And I think as long as I would not suggest slipping brochures under the door or, taping phone numbers to the door or anything like that, because you could put that person in more danger. But I think just making sure she knows that you are somebody that is a safe place that she could talk to if she needed to is probably the best thing that you can do.
Okay, then we have Michelle. You have a really good handle on how the victim rationalizes or how the person feels. And then we also have Christy shared the North Dakota Human Trafficking Task Force hotline on there for everybody who is looking for that.
Perfect. Thank you, Christy. Okay, we'll go into this section a little bit. I got about 20 minutes, right? Okay. So basically some of the things we know is that about 38% of domestic violence victims become homeless at some point in their lives. And over 90% of homeless victims have experienced physical or sexual abuse at some point in their lives, whether by an intimate partner, a family member, or a stranger. And then 80% of survivors entering shelter have identified finding housing I can afford as a need second only to safety for myself. So generally when people come into the shelters, they're looking for safety first. And then one of the basic needs is finding housing that's affordable. And I think a lot of us know that because of the oil boom, things went up, rents went up, and they never really went back down. So that's definitely something we struggle with a lot, is helping people find something that they can afford. Some of the barriers that we've run into with victims and clients to finding permanent housing is a lot of the times there's a lack of any credit or a bad credit history. And I guess sometimes we've found that, maybe the offender had that person put all the things in their name and then, walked out and left with bills, or went to prison and left them with bills or whatever. And so sometimes I guess it's nice to have that conversation with a potential client to just maybe find out a little bit more about why their history is bad with credit. Same with like eviction histories. Sometimes they're evicted, but they never had the means to pay that rent. It was always the offender's responsibility. And, again, maybe they left and that person ended up holding the bag. So I guess if somebody is telling you that they had a past bad situation with a partner of some sort, that you actually ask a few questions and try to figure out, maybe this person has this history, but since then they've gotten a job and they've, have been working really hard to kind of clean up that stuff. And so maybe they deserve a second chance or another chance. We've seen a lot of people where, there's been holes punched in the walls and whatever, and then she's the only one on the lease. So then she ends up being responsible for it, or vice versa, he, she. Lack of employment, might never have been able to work, maybe never rented anything before and now is trying to find their own place to get away from that person. And then finances, like it's difficult for most people that have normal lives to come up with security deposit and first month's rent right off the top. So maybe working with people a little bit on those kind of things is helpful. Not everyone's going to come looking for an apartment and say, I'm a victim of domestic violence, but you can sometimes pick those things up through some of these things on this list, or just talking with them about where they lived before, what happened, that kind of stuff. Some of the warning signs of abuse you might see are You know, they might not want anyone else to come in their apartment unless their partner's present. They might talk about their jealousy, their partner's jealousy or possessiveness. They might use excuses about injuries. I tripped, I fell. They might wear, this is one I never really knew until I started paying attention, but might wear clothes inconsistent with the weather. Like it's a cloudy day and they're wearing sunglasses, or, you know, and then looking at the ground, or long sleeves when it's hot out. You know, sometimes those are little cues to that person being abused. Maybe they never go anywhere, they're always home. Showing signs of depression or anxiousness, especially around another, if it's a woman around another male, or you know, worried, checking their watch, those kind of things, that, oh, he's going to be home soon, that kind of stuff. So just kind of be aware of some of the warning signs or red flags maybe, of abuse, and that, you know, maybe you just say, is there anything I can help you with? Is there anything you want to talk about? You know, just opening that door for somebody, and they might slam the door shut, but at least they know maybe in the future that you're somebody they could maybe go to. Other ways landlords can help that we have had luck with in the past was, you know, maybe asking a landlord to split a deposit over a couple months to make it a little easier financially. Um, Asking if they can sign a shorter lease, maybe 6 months to start with, and then month to month after that, or another 6 months. That's really beneficial for both the tenant and the landlord. I don't think any landlords like to go through the court process and things like that, but if they have a shorter lease, then, you know, they know that there's an end in sight, and then you don't have to worry about somebody not being able to pay their rent after that 6 months. Asking questions like I talked about. If a tenant requests something that could be construed as a safety situation, being open to that is always helpful. I know people that have moved into a place and they're like, it's just really dark by my garage. And then I'll say, well, let's just call the landlord and see if they'll be willing to put up a motion light. In the long run, it might cost you 50 or 60 bucks, but maybe it's something that saves somebody's life. You know, things like changing the locks. We've had a lot of those situations. We actually have a locksmith in town that keeps track of a list of when they go to change a lock for us. If we ask them to do that, they'll make a list, and if that offender would happen to call them to change it back, they would look and they'd say, sorry, we're not changing it back, because they would know that that was the reason why it was changed. So of course we always have victims sign releases and things like that, but it wouldn't stop them from calling another place, but it's just one more safety thing. I know we have offered to like help pay for that. I'm not saying that landlords should pay for everything, but at least be open to working out something, and maybe getting an agency to help pay for that, or you know, somebody to donate something like a motion light, or working in the nonprofit world, you kind of become professional beggars sometimes. So we've been really creative in how we've tried to help clients feel safe in their own homes. And then just, you know, referring victims to AARC or whatever program, CVIC, whatever programs in your area, if you feel like it's somebody that needs help. We had some posters, and I don't know if we still do that, if law enforcement still does that, but they had put together a poster and had hung these posters in all of the lobbies of their apartment buildings around town that said, you know, are you a victim of domestic violence? And they had the hotline number on it and stuff. So that's another option, is to work with your local domestic violence program to see if you can put together kind of a poster that can go on the bulletin board by the mailboxes or something like that. Again, like how to intervene safely, like the question that was asked, you know, ask if something's wrong, tell them you're concerned, listen and validate their feelings, offer them help, and then support their decisions. And that really goes for anybody, not just landlords, but just if you see somebody that's in a situation, or you talk to somebody that you're a little concerned with, any of those ideas are helpful. in making someone feel like they have a safe place to go or to talk to someone that will listen. The Violence Against Women Act, it basically, you can't be denied housing assistance based on acts of violence. It defines what a victim is. And so basically, if they're seeking any admission to a federally assisted housing unit, they would be covered by VAWA as far as not being denied because they are a victim. Everyone probably knows this, and I won't read it word for word, but basically a tenant who's a victim of domestic violence has the right to terminate their lease early. And of course, there's things that need to happen. They're responsible for that month as well as the month after that. If it can't get re-rented right away, if you have a protection order, I guess I should make sure that's in there. And it's in the landlord tenant book, the North Dakota landlord tenant book too. I copied this word for word from there. So next slide. That's the part about the full month plus an additional month. Next slide. And that's just the continuation of that. So we are at 218 West Broadway in Bismarck, which is conveniently located 2 doors down from the Dairy Queen, which thankfully is only open in the summertime. That's our website. We have a Facebook page. You can email. That's our main email. My email is Michelle E. So it's MICHELLEE @aarcnd.com. And if you have any questions or need any materials from us, just email me. And then our crisis line, which is staffed 24/7, is listed there as well.
Okay, I've got a couple more, a comment and a question for you.
Sure.
I agree, referring back to the landlord that was dealing with the tenant. I agree letting her know you are a safe place to go if necessary. If she comes into the management office alone, make sure to inform her of her rights under VAWA if that applies to your property. And then we have a question. Do you find that landlords are willing to help? I know personally that when I brought it up, the landlord did not want to rent to me due to being nervous of the offender finding out where I lived and decided not to rent to me.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that we've had 100% success. I don't think that's the first thing you open with when you're looking for a place, because I understand that landlords can be nervous about renting to somebody that might have someone dangerous around. But I would say the majority of ones we've worked with have been willing to give somebody a try. If an advocate calls that landlord and is like, look, she just needs a new start. We're going to help her with case management. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Usually a landlord's pretty willing to work with us. And I've called landlord upon landlord for people who are behind in their rent or really struggling for whatever reason. And I would say more often than not, landlords have been workable. So I think it's building those relationships in your communities with the advocacy center and, trusting. I also wouldn't call a landlord if I knew this person had 20 years of wrecking their apartments, and not that person, but the abuser, and, running out on rent. I think I'd work with them more around getting independent and, on the right track before I would refer them to a landlord, because I don't want to ruin our relationship either. But I had a landlord, he's unfortunately since has passed away, that I had put someone in with him, and we got her into a place, and the place was destroyed. Her kids colored all over the walls. There was things broken, and he called me and asked me to come to the apartment that day. And so I did go, and he said, I'm not holding you responsible, but I just want you to see what happened. And I said, well, that's part of it. These people are adults. We can advocate for them and we can help them, try to find a place to live, but I can't be in her house 24/7 to make sure her kids don't color on the walls. But he was really cool about it. And, we worked out, I said, I will help pay for some other, A or C will help pay for some of the repairs. And we just figured it out. So I think you just have to be open to working with your advocacy center in your area. And, I think you're all in it you want people to be safe. I don't think there's anybody that doesn't want anyone to be safe, but you have to realize that there's things that come along with any tenant, whether they have a dog they shouldn't have, or, they get laid off and they can't pay their rent, or they're a victim of domestic violence and they're dealing with all that other stuff. So my best advice is to build those relationships in your communities and try to trust each other that you're all looking out to help people out.
Okay, I've got another one. What is the landlord's responsibility when there is a no trespass or a no contact order?
So I guess the responsibility in my eyes would be that if they were aware, if that order is in place and a landlord was aware that someone was breaking that order. Now, the victim can't break the order. The victim gets the order, and it's the offender that would be the one that would be violating the order. If the landlord knows that that offender is over there, there's no reason you can't call the police. Again, would it make it more dangerous? It's possible, but at some point she came or he came in and got an order and wanted that protection. So I think it's your own. I think you would feel bad if something happened and you didn't report that person violating that order, whether it's a no contact, protection order, trespass order. We've had situations where a protection order or a no contact order isn't possible. So we've asked the landlord to do a criminal trespass with that victim's permission, obviously. And that's been helpful. And they're like, if I remember right, I think they're like $25. They're pretty easy to get. I could be wrong, but I think that's what it is here. So I would say if there's an order in place, it would be anyone's responsibility to call if they knew it was being violated.
Okay, and then yesterday we had talked about a tenant where she was moving to a different unit because of abuse, and the landlord was charging her a higher rate because he was afraid that the person would come and break the door. You want to just touch on that for a little bit?
Sure. I don't know that that's legality wise. I don't know if that's legal or not, but it sounds like a discrimination issue to me. Like, I don't know how you can charge somebody extra just because you think something might happen. I would recommend not doing that. And instead of that, I guess I would talk to her about what would make what would make them feel safer in their apartment. If you're worried that person's going to come over and do damage to the place, put a criminal trespass order in place. That's one thing. Or, talk with her about what would make her feel safer. Maybe she wants a deadbolt on her door, or a motion light, or, something like that. And again, refer her to the program in her area, because obviously you already know that she is a victim. So, maybe tell her that she should talk with an advocate about what can happen or what can be done to help her. But I would highly suggest not raising a security deposit for that reason. I don't know if it's legal, but it certainly doesn't sound like it.
Okay, and then that same person, the police ended up breaking down the door to assist her while the abuser was in the unit. They charged the abuser for the door, but he has no money, so he's not paying it. Is the landlord responsible for that, or would that fall on the victim? And I'm not sure if you can answer that or not.
In a perfect world, I would say that the landlord is, legally the tenant's responsible is what it comes down to. But if it could come either out of the security deposit or work with that victim to make payments on it, or have her talk to her advocacy center if they can help. I mean, we've paid for some of that stuff before if we have the money to do it. But I wouldn't say like it should be a reason to evict her or anything. I would definitely work with her on it, you know, one of those options possibly. If she's on the lease, I mean, I think legally it comes down to her being responsible. Even if the police charged him, he's not going to pay it.
Okay, and that looks like it is it for all the questions right now.
Great.
Okay, thank
Like
you.
Yeah, like I said, anybody can email me or the AARC email too. That I actually get both of those, so either one will come to me. If you need any information or other questions, just let me know.
Okay, thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
We will be sending out the evaluation form, and we ask that you please fill it out as part of our grant so that we can keep doing these trainings for you. So thank you, Michelle.